Hello, this is New Wave of British Heavy Metal.com. Today is the 9th of October 2020, and today we're going to look at the reissue of an album called Run for Cover by a band from the old Nawabum days called Chinawite. Before I get into it too much, if I could ask a little favour, if I may, that you consider please subscribing to the channel. That would be a big help and certainly appreciated. Right, on to Chinawite. This Run for Cover is their one and only album from the mid 1980s when New Wave of British Heavy Metal was at its peak, of course. And then they just disappeared like many others at the time. But this is a really stand-up album, and you say it's just been reissued in the last few days. Now, Chinawite were from South Yorkshire, well, Sheffield, and of course that region, the whole Sheffield, Barnsley, Rotherham, was a bit of a new wave of British heavy metal hotbed at the time, and of course, to name just two, Def Leppard and Saxon, right? But Chinawite were from that region as well, and could easily have been up there with the other two that I've just mentioned. But instead, they were pretty much under the radar. And as I've said, this Run for Cover is the one and only album that's done, and it's just been reissued by Skull Records, and it really is a cracking stuff. Back in the 80s when they formed, the local radio station in Sheffield, Radio Hallam, had a weekly rock show that I used to listen to, well, every week, And if I remember correctly, Chinawite did a session for the Radio Hallam rock show, which helped to raise their profile a bit. And then they followed, as seemed to be at the time, the usual pattern for Nawabum style bands. They put out a single in the early 80s, Blood on the Streets. That was well received. It found its way onto a popular compilation album that came out at the time as well, called Metal Prisoners. And Chinawite started to gain some momentum, and they were offered a record deal with Mausoleum Records, which resulted in Run for Cover. And it came out about 1984, I think, and it's a really classy effort. Now, Chinawite, what you might call, but were a bit more refined than many new wave of British heavy metal era bands. I mean, they did hit hard, make no mistake. These are proper rock songs, but they were at the more melodic end of things, I guess, is a way to describe it. The album is full of well-performed, well-written, melodic heavy rockers. There's big hooks, choruses, some really excellent rhythm guitar that chugs things along behind the scenes, and the solos when they come along they do have some punch about them, but they're economic as well. It's not just flashiness for the sake of it. The title track is an excellent example of that. There's a nice chugging introduction before it breaks out into an excellent sort of rock song that UFO might have done at the time. In fact, it reminds me of something that UFO could easily have done. And the rest of Run for Cover is not dissimilar. There's nice clean chords, that chugging rhythm guitar is ever present. The drums punch it along as well, and the vocals are really clean and powerful. It's all enjoyable stuff. In particular, highlights are Slow Train, which is very catchy, Looking for Action, which has got a bit of a mean feel to it, Take No Prisoners, and the really, really, really catchy Midnight Cafe. That'll get in your head straight away and stay there. Also, tagged on to the end of this reissue, is the single that Chinawite put out a few years before the album. We've got Blood on the Streets and Ready to Satisfy, and both of them are a little bit harder edged than the songs on the album itself, but still great nonetheless. And so unfortunately that was it for Chinawite. One album, see you later, off they went. But Run for Cover is a really fine album, and while it might not be, arguably, depending on your point of view, what you might call traditional, in inverted commas, new wave of British heavy metal, it's a really crisp, clean, melodic rock style stuff, and it's stood up really well over the years. I would recommend that you check it out. If you'd like to do that, there's a link in the description under the video to the post on the website, and also a link to the CD on Amazon if you'd like to pick it up. If you're thinking twice about it, it's I guess you could call Chinawite a little bit of UFO, little bit of praying mantis, and a little bit of FM, all squished together. It's that kind of style, but I would recommend it. So do check it out. Links below in the description. Another plea to please, if you would, subscribe to the channel. That would be appreciated. And as always, thanks for listening and take care.